to the Vice President, Apostle Duncan,
Amen.
to all of the cabinet members, and to the pastor of this church.
Amen.
We thank you for allowing us to come and worship with you. I first of all want to solicit your prayers tonight. I've been dealing with the past 2.5 weeks with a sinus infection. It causes me to have migraines. So I'm praying that this medication just holds up for the next 13 minutes. I want to send a shout out, amen, to my father. Amen. Who raised me up since the day I was born. Amen. Amen. And that's to Reverend Dr. Thomas Reeves. Amen. My love, and I thank him for his guidance. I thank him for being a wonderful father. And I thank him for keeping me on the straight and the narrow. Sometimes when we're young, we think that our parents are so harsh and so hard. But when you get older, it's funny because you find yourself saying the exact same thing that they said. Amen. And so I thank him, and to my mother, my mom who sits back there, Deacon Deanna Reeves, amen. To my brother, Deacon Byron Burns, amen. Amen. To my other two deacons back there, Barbara Welsh and Randy Brown, amen. And to my secretary, amen. Anita Freeman, let me put your name out there. Amen. And to everyone accompanied tonight, and to my brother, whom I love, I thank him. If it had not been for him, I probably wouldn't even know where Coatesville is. Amen. And I thank him for that. Amen. I've learned in the seminary, a great preacher of Coatesville once said, and then I heard my teacher say it, that people's attention spans are no longer than 12 minutes. Right. So I try not to go over the 15-minute limit, hoping that when I get to 12, you just hold your attention for another 3 minutes. Amen? Amen. I have undoubted the task of bringing the word tonight from John, the 8th chapter. You've already had it read into your hearing, but I'm so accustomed that when I preach, I have to read it myself. It just goes with the flow. Amen. And you don't have to stand. It's already been read, but I want to read it again. John chapter 8, verses 12 and 13. And it reads this way: Then Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. And you know these no good Pharisees, therefore said unto him, Thou bearest record of thyself. Thy record is not true. Some Bibles will say, you bear witness to yourself, and your witness is not true. I want to talk from this subject tonight. Can I get a witness? Amen. Can I get a witness? Amen. Apostle Duncan, I must admit, tonight, in front of all of these wonderful preachers, that when I started out preaching, I always ran to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Right. It wasn't until I matriculated through the seminary and began to read all of the books that I could read that John has now become my favorite writer out of the 4 evangelists. You take note that when we compare John to the other writers, we see that John relates what they omit. If you will, John gleans up what the others passed up. If you will, he gives us the mystery where the others give us the history. The other writers, if you will, write more of the tasantika, that is, the bodily things of Christ. Where John writes more of the pneumatica, which is the spiritual things of the gospel, the life and the soul of it. John deals, if you will, with the simplicity of the gospel. He's so simple that you might kind of get confused trying to remember something in the 28 chapters of Matthew or the 16 chapters of Mark or the 24 chapters of Luke. But John is so simple until in all 21 chapters he writes something that you just can't forget. For instance, in chapter 1 he writes, God is a sovereign God. In chapter 2, he says he's not only a sovereign God, but he's a social God, because not only did he go to the wedding, but he went to the reception. In chapter 3, he's a nice food teacher. In chapter 4, he's a friend of sinners. In chapter 5, he's a supplier. In chapter 6, it's a boy with 2 fish and 5 loaves. In chapter 7, he says, I'm the water of life. In chapter 8, he says, I'm the light of the world. In chapter 9, he spits on the ground, makes a salve, tells the man, go wash. In chapter 10, he says, I'm the good shepherd. In chapter 11, he raises Lazarus from the grave. In chapter 12, he says, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. In chapter 13, he has supper with the disciples. In chapter 14, he says, let not your heart be troubled. In chapter 15, he says, I am the true vine. In chapter 16, he says, I'm sending back my comforter. In chapter 17, it's the high priestly prayer. In chapter 18, it's the trial of Jesus. In chapter 19, it is finished. In chapter 20, he says, Thomas, stick your finger in my hand. And in 21, he says, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? He deals with the simplicity of the gospel. But if you will, I had a problem with chapter 8, verse 12 and 13. I had to ask John, what is it, John, that I could say about these verses that has not already been said? What can I expound out of these verses that has not really already been expounded on? And John says, preacher is simple. Y'all gonna get it in a minute. John says, well, first of all, where are they? I said, John, that's easy. They're at the Feast of the Tabernacles. And John says, well, why are they there? I said, it's a celebration to help the people to remember that for 40 years they had wandered in the wilderness before God finally brought them to the promised land. John says, see, preacher, it's simple. He says, now where is Jesus standing when he makes the statement? I looked at it. I said, John, he's standing in front of the candelabras that light up the streets of Jerusalem. And then I started thinking. I said, John, you're making sense now. I started thinking about the light. Come on. You have to know that Jesus is not just simply saying he was the light of the world or that he was another light to the world. Jesus is not saying that he's holding the light or that he has the light or even that he is the way to the light. He is declaring that he's the only light of the world. All right. There have been a whole lot of analogies made about the light that are all true. But I believe that he is declaring, I am the Shekinah glory that these candelabras symbolize. He's drawing their attention likened back to the cloud and pillar of fire in the wilderness. So if light represents God's presence, if light represents God's guidance, if light represents his protection, what he is saying is that I was the one who protected you from Pharaoh. I was the one who guided you through the wilderness, and I was the one that was there for you always. I'm going somewhere. So watch this. Here it is that it symbolized God's presence. And the record reveals how the two pillars which guided the people of Israel marked the presence of God in a dramatic way. Because if you go over to Exodus, it says the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire gave them a light so as to go by day and night. At no time did the people forget the presence of God was with them every step of the way. So Jesus, as the light of the world, assures us of the presence of God. So now my question begins, can I get a witness that no matter where you've been in your life, God was right there. Maybe you've been abandoned. Maybe you've been left alone. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you lost some friends. Maybe you lost some family members. Maybe you felt depressed, deprived, and depleted. But no matter what, he's been right there all of the time. I'm on your and somebody here can witness that they found out that he'll never leave you nor forsake you. I'm on those guns. I got about 5 minutes left, so you know now that it symbolizes his presence. But now it symbolizes God's guidance. And the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire represented God's guidance for the people. They were in the desert. And due to the heat, things can get real confusing. The heat could distort distance and produce mirages. But in Numbers chapter 9, verse 17 through 23, we are told of the relationship of the children of Israel to the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. So essentially, it's simple. When the cloud moved, the people moved. When the people followed, when the cloud stood still, they remained where they were. And as the light, Jesus is our God. And not only can he show us the way out of darkness, but we should also seek his counsel whenever we have a major decision to make as we walk in the light. And can I get a witness tonight that some of us in here right now are in the mess that we're in, not because of the devil, not because of friends, not because of family members, but because of us. You didn't seek God first before you left your wife. You didn't seek God first before you left your husband. You didn't seek God first before you took that job. You didn't seek God first before you went into that other relationship. And I cannot tell somebody that's what's wrong with our country. Republicans fighting Democrats. They're all about God until they get in. They can't even pass an unemployment bill. And people are losing their home. Millions can't pay their bills. Why? Because Senate is not seeking God first. And that's what's wrong with our churches. We're doing everything under the sun to get people to come, but we're not seeking God first. So before you make that decision, somebody needs to go down on their knees and say, God, you know, God, break your home. So here it is now. We know about his presence.
We know about
now his guidance. But now it symbolizes God's protection. Go back one more time. Moses and the children of Israel find themselves trapped on the edge of the Red Sea.
Come on.
God not only opened a passage through the sea, but he stood between them and their enemies. The cloud that had appeared on the day that Israel left Egypt stood between the Israelites and the pursuing army of Pharaoh. In Exodus we read, and the pillar of cloud went from before them, stood behind them, so it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other.
That's right.
All that night, Jesus is saying, do you remember the pillar that came between your fathers and the Egyptians near the Red Sea? The pillar that protected them, that was me. And the protection I gave them, I'm offering to you. And can I get a witness that God has protected you from danger seen and unseen? The devil had you cornered, but God protected you. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, if it had not been for God's witness protection program, I'd be dead, sleeping in my grave. And so here it is, I heard the songwriter say, God blocked it. He wouldn't let it be so. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't know how he did it. I really don't want to know how he did it. But God blocked it. He blocked it. He blocked it. He blocked it. He blocked me from getting in that car accident. He blocked it. So we can get in that messed up relationship. We blocked it. He wouldn't. I'm through now. I stayed within my parameters of my time limit. But I told you now about God's presence. And I told you about God's guidance. And now you know that the light represents God's protection. But I could not leave without jumping in to verse 13. Come on. Because verse 13 says, they reply that your witness is not true. But what they didn't understand is that Jesus knew the law better than they did. Without me going into a whole bunch of rhetoric, for the law back in those days says that if you had 2 or 3 witnesses to corroborate your testimony, then your testimony was true. They overlooked the testimony of the others. I said, John, who can I find to be a witness? John said, come in, Samuel. What do you have to say about the light? Samuel said, you are my lamp, and the Lord turns my darkness into light. Come in, Job, what do you have to say? He redeems my soul from going down to the pit, and I will enjoy the light. Come here, Isaiah. What do you have to say about the light? Isaiah said the sun will no more be your light by day, nor will be the brightness of the moon shine on you. For the Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will have your glory. I said, whoever called next? I said, come here, Micah. What you got to say about the light? Micah said, because I have sinned against him, I will bear the Lord's wrath until he pleads my case and establishes my right. He will bring me out into the light, and I will see his righteousness. Come here, Peter, talk to them for a little while. Peter said, but you are a chosen generation and a royal priesthood and a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should go forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into the marvelous light. Good night now, children. I hope I see y'all on the other side. But I got one star witness left. Come here, star witness. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? So help you God. He said, I can't do nothing, preacher, but tell the truth. I said, what you got to say about the light? He said, here it is, preacher. Are you ready for it? I said, yeah. He said, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Who shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Who shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even my enemies and my foe, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and they fell. Though a host should have came against me, my heart should not fear. The Lord rise against me. In this one thing, I'll be confident. One thing I desire of the Lord, that will I seek him in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, are you a witness that God is the light. God is the light of the world. God is my doctor. God is my lawyer. God is my counselor. When I feel like I'm gonna lose my mind, God is everything that I need him to be. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, my life. Turn to your neighbor and say,